Before we start, this video is part 2 of my review of the Serious Sam games. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you check it out before watching this one. All got up? Good. On we go. Before we start the analysis, something I need to mention is what happened between BFE and Serious Sam 4. During the initial development of Sam 4, Crow Team thought of a new device called the Jammer, but instead of using it for a new Sam game, Crow Team decided to create an entirely new game based on it.
I wonder, who will you be, our children? Will you love us for having created you? Will the world you build be like ours, or so different that today we cannot even imagine it?
In 2014, Crow Team released the Talos Principle, a puzzle game in the vein of Portal. The game was a critical success with its genius puzzles and an amazing story from Crow Team's new writer, Jonas Kairatsis. So when development for Sam 4 proper started, Jonas' talent would give the story of Serious Sam an upgrade along with other aspects from BFE.
The truth is, they don't care about who we used to be or what we wanted to do. To them, we're just slaves. But if they thought this was gonna be easy, they came to the wrong fucking planet.
Surprisingly, Serious Sam 4 is
the prequel to the prequel everybody wanted.
This means the story takes place in the middle of Earth's defense against Mental's invasion.
So we're gonna rendezvous with a priest.
Yep.
Because he knows where to find the Ark of the Covenant.
Yep.
Which contains the Holy Grail.
Yep.
Which is an alien artifact.
Yep.
So we have to go to the Vatican.
Yep.
That's AAA, rookie. Get used to it.
I don't know. This is some Da Vinci Code shit, man.
You don't like the Da Vinci Code, Sam?
Nah.
Why not? Some good theories in there.
No literary merit.
So, who's your favorite writer?
Philip K. Dick, I guess.
Philip K. Dick?
Wait, Sam reads books?
We'll get into more detail with the story later, but right off the bat, I knew it would be a major improvement from BFE just from this cutscene alone. As a prequel to the prequel, the major weapons from both BFE and the OG encounters make a return. The first weapons you are given are the combat knife and the deagle. Unfortunately, we immediately come to the first hiccup. You remember what I said about the sledgehammer being given a proper tutorial in BFE? That's because it was the only weapon you had for the first few minutes before you got the deagle. Thus, the player learned that the sledgehammer is ideal for taking care of Nars naturally. But since you have the deagle at the start of 4, most players will use that weapon first and neglect the knife.
Yeah, I don't like having the knife as one of the things you can select, because I don't really feel like I'm ever going to use it. If the pistol always has infinite ammo, then what's the point?
But as for the deagle, it is simply amazing. Recoil is removed, making it pinpoint accurate to become a rather powerful weapon to deal with small groups of weak enemies and even medium enemies later. Later in the level, you come across the pump-action shotgun that no longer has a clip size. With its tighter spread, it is far more reliable than any of its previous iterations. We then come across the double barrel that has a beefier sound along with a faster fire rate than before. Next, we come to the reworked assault rifle, or Tommy gun if you activate the pre-order skin. While it still reloads, the clip size is doubled to 80 and reloading is much quicker. The rest of the returning weapons are as follows. The rocket launcher is the same as it always was. The sniper rifle is a regular weapon again with a 10-round clip and ammo capacity of 40. C4 and the grenade launcher return, then we have the minigun whose ammo is doubled to 1000. The Devastator also returns but now has 25 rounds in each clip and its shots now pierce through enemies. The laser rifle now has an ammo capacity of 600 instead of 400, and the cannon now has a 40 cannonball max. But there are two new weapons. The first is an AA-12-esque auto shotgun that has a 20-round magazine with its own separate shotgun ammo. The second is a homing rocket-propelled chainsaw launcher that can plow through multiple enemies before exploding. It also has a secondary fire mode to use it as a regular chainsaw, which most people will neglect like the knife. And speaking of secondary fire, some weapons have alternate fire upgrades. For the Doom-inspired upgrades, the pump action has an underbarrel grenade launcher while the rocket launcher has a multi-lock-on feature. Meanwhile, the grenade launcher has a manually detonated cluster grenade function while the laser gun has a death ray upgrade. With these new additions, the Sirius formula is affected in a major way. But before we discuss the specifics, we need to put the rest of the cards on the table. One of those new cards is Gadgets. Throughout the game, you collect 9 different gadgets that can be used at any time. The Holo Decoy distracts enemies and is ideal for redirecting a horde of kamikazes. The Life Injector is a medkit that can overcharge your health past 100. Rage Serum is a serious damage and speed energy drink. Hack drones fire on enemies that get close to you. Time Warp devices pause all the enemies around you. Psychotropic grenades turn enemies on each other. Black holes suck up nearly every enemy on the battlefield, while mini nukes blow up nearly every enemy on the battlefield. And the last gadget is the Heart, which is an extra life. But unlike Serious Sam 2, these lives work like Doom Eternal's extra lives to bring you back to the battlefield right away. For the enemies that you will use these tools on, Serious Sam 4 brings back the majority of the enemies from the first encounter. Thankfully, the 3 infamous enemies out of the 5 returning from BFE are nerfed to be more balanced. Clone soldiers are replaced by Octanian troopers who now have projectile weapons instead of hit scan weapons. The Technopalms fire missiles instead of bullets and can be hurt by non-explosive weapons now. And the Witch Brides only throw things at you instead of freezing you. As for the new enemies, there's quite a bit, so let's begin. The process are standard zombies. Belchers are the Serious Sam equivalent of the Left 4 Dead boomers. Octanian troopers come in 3 variations. Troopers who are standard soldiers, commanders who fire a barrage of rockets behind an energy shield, and snipers who snipe. Combat drones come in huge swarms. Hemovores.
It's a fucking vampire.
Okay, vampires who phase around the area to fire ghost or melee you. The Octanian Zealot who acts like Kukupio the Pumpkin except with a sledgehammer and can only be hurt with explosives or shooting him in the back. Space mummies who lob fireballs. The Pyromaniac who hovers around and launches volleys of napalm. Kyopsils who float around and fire slow projectiles. Zuben Harkabian spiders who replace the Antirisan spiders. And lastly, we have the Sagittarian Sidewinder, which is a gigantic mini-boss. With these new ingredients, it's time to talk about the new blender, which is the skill tree. During some levels, you will come across a box which contains a Syrian artifact of might. Each one you collect grants a skill point to fill up a skill tree. Many of the perks are quality of life improvements like having enemies drop items at random, but there are many perks that need to be talked about. Serious Sam 4 carries over reloading, ADS, and sprinting from BFE. Perks such as a faster reload, normal running speed while ADS, and reloading and firing while sprinting mitigate the hindrances from BFE to make the combat far less cumbersome. But one perk path that is a hindrance on the whole game is the melee path. In the BFE section of the previous video, I said that executions weren't bad, but were let down by cumbersome execution. Thankfully, you don't take a trophy in your hand when you execute enemies, but the executions are neutered by having the perks hidden behind this skill path. Because of the limited number of skill points in the game, you'll have to sacrifice perks for other perks. This means you're not going to be able to execute larger enemies if you stagger them because your perks are invested elsewhere. Even the first perk of gaining health back per melee execution is useless because you'll end up losing more health if you charge into a mob of enemies instead of keeping your distance. Lastly, the abilities to use street signs as melee weapons and rodeoing werebolls and zealots are only gimmicky at best. Your best bet is to invest in the perks that revolve around the true game changer of the game, dual wielding. With this perk, you're allowed to get the lead out faster at the cost of not being able to use some of your weapon's alternate fire. This perk synergizes greatly with the Deagle, making it a highly effective grunt killer while saving ammo. Also, this rectifies one of my first encounter complaints. With dual wielding, you can get the buckshot out of the shotguns faster. Thanks to this, I found myself using these weapons very often against swarms of drones and small packs of clears. Later in the game, you can upgrade this perk to hold 2 different weapons new Colossus style. This can come in handy where you can use 2 different weapons for 2 different jobs. For example, you can shred through a horde of charging enemies with the minigun while splattering zealots with the armor-piercing Devastator shells simultaneously. And might I say, the ability to fire 2 cannons simultaneously to demolish canoes is a godsend. But there are benefits to fire weapons normally. As stated before, the weapon mods make some weapons more useful than they ever were before. The lock-on feature for the rocket launcher rectifies the slower projectiles it had in TFE. Instead of launching 5 rockets one by one to take down a major biomechanoid, you can lock 5 rockets onto the enemy and fire and forget. You can also lock onto a maximum of 5 enemies and take them out all at once. With your knowledge of how many rockets it takes to take out each medium and large enemy, you can systematically destroy each threat in smooth succession. The cluster grenade feature for the grenade launcher allows for extreme crowd control. Not only that, but grenades you don't detonate stay on the ground and detonate when enemies come close like proximity mines. These two mechanics drastically change the game in a good way. But an unfortunate consequence is that C4 is gimped. Because both launchers fulfill C4's two roles so effectively, C4's only ideal use is for story purposes and boss fights. But other than dual wielding and alternate fire, a new feature changes the game as well: headshots. Thanks to this, enemies can now be taken out much faster than in the first encounter with carefully aimed shots. Two great examples. In the previous games, you needed to fire the double barrel shotgun twice to kill a werebull. Now, you can take care of a werebull by waiting for them to get close and land a single shot on the head. The other example is being able to take care of the witch brides with a single sniper round to the head. With this mechanic, you can use more diverse tactics to take care of your enemies in a different order than you would in TFE. These new additions works wonders for the Serious formula to make Serious Sam 4 a far better game than Serious Sam 2 and BFE. However, there are several things that hold it back from being as good or even better than the OG encounters. The biggest one? Bloom. This was when I realized that Serious Sam 4 was not entirely free from BFE's mistakes. In a modern military shooter, Bloom is meant to add a bit of realism because an average soldier on the front lines cannot headshot a platoon of enemy soldiers from the hip with a single magazine. But Serious Sam is not an average soldier. He's an action hero who can save the universe all by himself. The only reason I think this feature was implemented is because Crow Team felt the accuracy of the Deagle, AR, and minigun may have made the game too easy. But that wouldn't make sense because Bloom didn't exist in the OG encounters, and those games are still challenging on higher difficulties. If it's in response to headshots making killing enemies easier, then I disagree with that viewpoint. The sheer number of enemies coming at you and the limited ammo for weapons that aren't the pistol are already enough of a challenge without this handicap. But even so, the bloom for the pistol isn't too bad if you want to unload a clip into a charging enemy without a weak point. But for the AR, its bloom is so ludicrous that you're better off firing off in short bursts even if a charging horde is coming down upon you. But do you know what's funnier? The maximum bloom for the minigun is smaller than the one for the AR. Shouldn't that be the other way around? The AR is more accurate but needs to be reloaded, while the minigun doesn't reload but is less accurate? But the problem gets worse with dual wielding. When you fire either weapon dual wielded, the bloom is so crazy that the only enemies you're able to kill will be the ones who are standing at point blank range. But the cherry on top of everything is that the laser rifle doesn't even have bloom, dual wielded or not. And speaking of the laser rifle, we need to talk about its attachment. Many people love the Death Ray mod, and yes, I will admit, it is fun to use. But the problem is that you only get this mod in the second half of the 13th level, lose the weapon in the next level, then get it back halfway through the final level of the game. Why is that? Well, I believe it's because the Death Ray is too powerful. Let me explain. In melee shooters, alternate fire modes exist to give an extra tactic for the player to use in combat. Usually this means there are trade-offs and benefits to using alternate fire modes. Regularly, the rocket launcher fires straight ahead and hits targets normally. But with the lock-on, you fire at least 2 rockets to a single target or multiple targets at once. The trade-off is you can't get the rockets out normally to deal with a crowd of rushing enemies, thus the alternate fire mode is balanced. But for the Death Ray, the only trade-off is that you burn through your ammo a little quicker. But considering how powerful the Death Ray is, I found it to be more beneficial to use only the Death Ray and never the primary fire. I'm only speculating, but I feel if there was a caveat of a wind-up period, speed penalty, or limited range to the beam, then it would be more balanced and Crow Team would have been more comfortable introducing the weapon and mod earlier in the game. The last negative thing I feel about the new mechanics are the gadgets. Whenever I play games with an inventory, I tend to hoard items and hardly use them. This is because there is no limit to the items you can carry. In the second encounter in Serious Sam 2, you have a limit of 3 serious bombs. When you come across a 4th one, you're encouraged to use one of your bombs in the immediate area to get the most out of them without being wasteful. Because of the unlimited count for each gadget, I don't feel any urgency to use them and forget about them most of the time on normal and hard. But for the gadgets themselves, I have a beef with half of them. The heart, hollow decoy, life injectors, and hack drones are useful in gaining a small, balanced upper hand in the heat of battle. But for the time warp, psychotropic grenades, black holes, and mini nukes, it's obvious they're just 4 different flavors of the serious bomb. but there's a small detail that makes them overpowered serious bombs. Take this moment from the second encounter where enemies are spawning everywhere around you. When you use a serious bomb, all the enemies in the area die instantly, but the enemies that are yet to spawn are not killed. Thus, this acts as a short breath of respite before you go to regain control of the battlefield. When you look at this moment in Serious Sam 4 when you use a black hole, it sucks up all the enemies on the field, but because it's on a timer, it'll continue to suck up all the enemies that spawn in. Thus, it's an auto win. In summary, the 4 new serious bombs are overpowered and oversupplied, but the gadget I do not like at all is Rage Serum. As I said before, the serum is a serious damage and speed energy drink, but what bothers me is how it breaks boss fights.
Hope you enjoyed that meal, because it sure as hell is gonna be your last. For some reason, I just don't approve of people eating my friends. I'm gonna cut you into little pieces.
Back in the previous video, I said that power-ups were in places where their use was ideal. You were encouraged to use the power-ups in those moments because you couldn't hold on to them to use for later. If the Rage Serum were to be replaced by traditional power-ups, then bosses wouldn't be broken and you wouldn't be encouraged to hoard them. But with those complaints out of the way, it's time to talk about level design. Because Serious Sam 4 is a prequel to BFE, Sam is still on not modern-day Earth. But thankfully, Sam leaves the drab, dull streets of Egypt behind in favor of the vibrant, wider, and more colorful locations of Italy, France, and the Arctic tundra. Moreover, a new feature to the levels are side quests. As you travel through the level, you can make some detours to fight some more enemies and be rewarded with weapons, upgrades, gadgets, and/or rather funny moments.
Huh, a princess in a castle. How stereotypical.
Hello! I am trapped in the tower! I could really use your help up here!
Your knight in shining armor has arrived.
Oh, finally! Mon Dieu! I've been stuck in this fucking room for weeks! Weeks! Do you know what I've been eating? Cold hot dogs and warm soda from the snack machine. My body feels like a sponge. Another day and I would have tried eating the table just to get some fucking fiber in my diet!
I'm sorry, that sounds very...
And dressed like this! Do you think this is accurate? I have a PhD in medieval studies! I didn't even want to be a tour guide! Putain!
Well,
What I need now is a bottle of wine and a strong man. I have needs, you know? Come on, I have the master key. I'll take you to the break room and you can ride me like a...
Ma'am, I'm flattered, but I'm trying to save the world here.
Ah, merde. Is it very important?
Well, it's kind of urgent. About that key, though. Does it open every door in the castle?
Yes. At least all the storage facilities.
Oh, can I have it?
Ah, of course. Here you go.
That's really nice of you. Hey, you know what? I know this guy. You're gonna love him. His name's Rodriguez. I'll give you his number.
I'll give him this. She is more beautiful than the last princess Sam had to save.
Holy cow! I changed my mind. You can keep her.
However, as we saw with Bloom, Serious Sam 4 still can't escape all the shackles of BFE. Because it's still not modern-day Earth, the levels are standard streets and countrysides without interesting gimmicks. No swimming sections, no Indiana Jones traps, no exotic search and destroy corridors, no platforming sections. But there are vehicle sections for the first time since Serious Sam 2, the major highlight being the highly advertised Pope-mobile.
Oh, yes! Thanks, crazy old Italian lady, and thank you, Mr. Pope!
Despite two major gripes of the aiming reticle being wonky and no repair kits on the battlefield, the sections with mechs are enjoyable. But surprisingly, my favorite vehicle moment has to be the Combine Harvester.
I always wanted to drive one of these over a bunch of aliens.
But despite these two vehicles, the rest are uninteresting. You ride around on a bike for a while to recreate that moment from the teaser trailer 2 years ago, but with wonky controls and the fact you only ride it for a few minutes...
Oh, I'll have to ditch the bike. Bye, baby. I'll miss you.
It's very underwhelming. And that's what I can say about the open world levels that were touted for years. All this level boils down to is Sam walking or running from point A to B like any other level. The only difference is the longer distance. There's nothing unique that Sam can bring to an open world level. And on that subject, the open world level marks the arbitrary lose all of your weapons moment. In the last video, I mentioned that these moments are like superhero losing their power moments. Well, I just figured out what they are also for. These moments happen because you become too powerful too fast in the eyes of Crow Team. Thus your weapons are reset to fill up the rest of the runtime without feeling too boring with your overpowered arsenal. It's not a game breaker, but the insulting part is it happens again at the start of the second to last level, which is the most underdeveloped level in the game. But the worst part is, you not only lose all of your weapons, but your gadgets as well. This leaves you to recollect your weapons and only a handful of gadgets over one short level and one long final level. At least in the second encounter, you had 3 long levels to get your weapons back the second time this happened. But to me, the most frustrating thing about the level design is that many fights within open arenas feel unfair at times. It's what I like to call the balance of bullshit. Back in the OG encounters, the enemies were meticulously placed for the player to see and deal with them before they overwhelmed you. When I played through the original games on serious difficulty, I considered my positioning and learned where the enemies were coming from to deal with them at the pace the weapons were able to provide. But in Serious Sam 4, some arenas have ludicrous numbers of enemies spawning in locations that I didn't find to be fair. Going back to gadgets for a moment, I think these moments purposely encourage you to use your 4 flavors of serious rounds just to skip the fights altogether. The greatest example is this moment when you get the cannon. This arena is large, but the structures in the middle take up most of the space, making it hard to move around and see what enemies are coming for you. After so many attempts, I just spammed my gadgets to skip the whole thing. But when you're not in these arenas, you're back on the city streets most of the time. And because most of the game is in city streets, that means... But the worst one is where you must get a wearable to launch you up to a platform to get the item. The genius at Crow Team who designed this secret needs to be demoted. But in addition to bad locations, the secrets themselves are underwhelming. At first, secrets consist of early access to a weapon, resource caches, Easter eggs, and traps that provide a lot of health if you thwart them. But as the levels go on, the secrets only consist mostly of gadgets. Some are worthwhile like hearts, but too many of them are medkits. It probably would have been better if there were more resource caches for powerful weapons. But the one secret that needs to come back for all future installments is the companion orb. In many levels, you come across a glowing light. If you shoot it, you get a bouncing orb that follows you around and damages enemies it bounces next to. While it isn't as reliable as the hacked drone, it's a rather nice friend to have at no extra cost. But the last gripe that needs to be mentioned is one you see right away when you start the game. Crow Team is a 40-man development team, and it shows in the presentation. The character animations during cutscenes are wonky, and the pursuit of photorealism takes a toll on the engine and file size. When you look back at the first and second encounters, both have a perfect blend of color and lighting, allowing you to marvel at the simple details and be able to make out enemies from a distance. In Sam 4, however, the lighting and color feels too saturated, still making it hard to make out enemies from a distance. I've seen comments saying that this game looks like a Unity asset flip, and while I'm not a graphics whore, that point of view isn't unfounded. If you go for visual realism in your game, regardless of the price tag, you're going to be judged by the benchmark set by the industry. Moreover, going for photorealism makes you run the risk of making your game look boring and not stand out from the rest. I don't know for certain, but I feel like if Crow Team had decided to go for a more compact and unique looking design like many throwback shooters of recent years, then I feel it would have been better received regarding presentation. But even with that, it's time we move on to something that's an overall improvement, the story. Unlike all the previous games, Sam isn't fighting Mental's army alone in this prequel to the prequel. Sam fights along AI companions for the first time since Serious Sam 2. They don't do much other than be a distraction for enemies, but the characters themselves provide something to the actual narrative. Jones, Rodriguez, Hellfire, and Quinn return from BFE, and all of them are given a lot more time to banter with each other.
Hey, Jones.
What now?
Tell us a joke, Jones.
Rodriguez.
Come on, man. Tell us a joke.
I just did.
It's a corpse here. killed those Scorps.
Hey, me too!
Scorp buddies! The big Scorp has joined the little Scorps.
Aw, I haven't seen a big one yet.
Isn't that a good thing?
But we were Scorp buddies.
Okay, guys, you stay here. Me and the lady, we'll go check out those goodies.
Aw, you going on a date?
Shut up, Rodriguez.
You know, I told General Brand this would happen, but did he listen to me? No. Nobody ever listens to Quinn. I have a degree in crisis management, but does that matter? Nope. We just do whatever stupid thing General Brand comes up with, and then everybody dies.
To be honest, I feel bad they will never be able to be this developed in BFE where their fates will be inevitably sealed. Well, how far Rodriguez and Quinn's fates, because Jones...
He had a brother, you know.
At this point, I'm beginning to think Jones is Crotein's version of Carmine. But other than the returning characters are a lineup of new ones. A shotgun-wielding priest, a crackpot conspiracy theorist, the asshole general archetype, a badass minigun grandma, two underdeveloped French resistance characters, and the main villain who's the spawn of Ebon Maw from Infinity War and Zinyak from Saints Row 4. But there are two highlights in the lineup. The first is a surprise favorite.
So, Awkward, what's your name?
I am called Chagak Zalma Gakiak.
Can I call you Charlie?
Ah, that is what my brood mother called me when I was but a hatchling.
This moment opens up so many possibilities for future games. Not every species in Mental's Horde is down for submission. Perhaps when we get an official sequel to the second encounter to officially retcon Serious Sam 2, we could get more history and lore about the homeworlds of the alien species. Sadly, Sam's time with Charlie is short, but it was very sweet.
Come, my friends! Let us show Tahum that the free peoples of the galaxy stand together!
But the real highlight is the MVP of the game.
I really wish I had a gun!
Catch!
Oh, I lost my shoe.
Nice shot!
Crap one-liner, though.
I wasn't trying to do a one-liner.
At first, Kenny is nothing special. But as time goes on, Sam develops a soft spot for Kenny and brings him under his one-liner wing.
Kenny! One-liner!
Abracadabra, lady.
See, you're getting the hang of it, kid!
Guess I am.
You
By the time we meet up with Kenny in France, we see he really has come into his own.
didn't want to die. You shouldn't have invaded our planet.
That's the spirit!
Let's put the carcass in Carcassonne.
Not bad!
Thanks! I thought it was a little over the top. That's what you get for blowing up my university.
Alas, we witness the only thing that can happen when we see a lovable side character come this far.
No! No, 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 no!
There goes another hero.
Come back here! Come back here, you son of a bitch! Fuck! Damn it, Kenny. Sorry, I wish... you know, I'm not good at this crap. Would you look at that? At least you got both your shoes. That's something, isn't it?
I've heard many people say that having actual serious moments ruins the tone of the story, but I don't mind it here. In BFE, the serious moments failed because of the lack of development between the characters. But in 4, we're shown much more how these characters relate to one another, thus we're given a human connection for the story. It also shows that Sam isn't just an action hero made of only one-liners.
With what hollow words will you immortalize this momentary triumph?
I lost my shoe.
What?
With John J. Dick's best performance so far, Sam has shown his own humanity in moments like these. And speaking of humanity, I think it's a good time to mention Bill Corwin.
Bill Corwin here, with another edition of Memories of Earth. I don't know about you, dear listeners, but when I was a kid, my mom and pop would take me on these endless hikes in the Appalachians. The forest basically started in our backyard. It was big, it was green, and I hated it. Because if you're 16 and would rather hang out at the mall or play video games, then this is about the worst thing your parents can do to you. But now we spend our days driving in armored cars from air raid shelters to military bunkers to abandoned subway stations. We break down our setup and relocate about 2 or 3 times a week for security reasons. And I really don't get to see much of the outside world, let alone a forest. And the Appalachians are a big smoking crater at any rate. So I guess I miss the outdoors and hiking through the stupid, monotonous forests full of songbirds and Thumper and Bambi and whatnot. Because some things you only miss once they're gone. This was Bill Corwin on Radio Free Earth, wishing for a little bit of blue on the horizon.
These radio broadcasts and audio logs are small, but with a mixture of comic relief and heartfelt moments, this war for humanity's very existence is given a real sense of, well, humanity. I know the writing seemed to be overlooked or dismissed by most reviewers, but it speaks volumes about the talent Jonas brings to the table. But now with the story talked about, and the review winding down, it's time I start the boss section. This time around, we have 3 mini-bosses, the Sidewinder, Canoom, and the Witch Bride. As for the actual bosses, here they are. Swamp Hive stands above you while spawning spiders and sending streaks of fire on the ground. Just keep running, gunning, and shooting your crab puns and you'll be fine. Megalopolyp. First phase, throws objects that can be shot down. Second phase, summons technos to swat you around. Third phase, hides for you to fight off a wave of troopers and technopolyps. Fourth phase, combine phase 1 and 2 until you're able to take him down for good. Can get a little frustrating without those repair kits I mentioned for the mech, but overall, it feels fair. Lord Ackerman. Like his Witch Brides, he flies around the arena and throws things at you, but with illusions to throw you off. Once you damage him enough, he'll heal at his Wandering Cocoon. When he does, lop C4 into it. Do this 3 or so more times, then finish the spacebar fly off. A little unbalanced, but with a few hearts on standby, you can get through this okay. Ongzang the 6th. Channel your inner Rico Rodriguez to grapple hook and parachute around the behemoth to plant C4 at his weak points. Once all points are destroyed, retreat to your mech and finish him off while dealing with a swarm of drones on the side. While it's annoying you can't shoot while parachuting, this is the best boss fight of the Ongzang family. And speaking of the final boss, we better talk about that highly advertised moment prior to the finale. The Legion system supposedly is a mechanic to register 100,000 enemies on the screen at once. But of course, it was a marketing ploy and it's nothing more than just a set piece. All you do is plow through a section of the horde of basic enemies with major enemies sprinkled here and there to get to a certain point before you're forced into a cutscene to start the final fight. But it does give me some ideas for the next installment. In conclusion, I really love Serious Sam 4 despite the shortcomings. While the photorealistic blunder and the technical issues at launch have hampered the initial experience for many, I still believe this is the best game in the series since the original encounters. Now that there are several patches and the dedicated support from Crow Team, I absolutely recommend this game. But my discussion of Serious Sam is not stopping here. Stick around for my upcoming 3rd video where I discuss the improvements that could be made and give new ideas for Serious Sam 5. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time!